Hey guys, today I'll be updating my 2022 Senate map here for the 2022 midterms, and currently after the 2020 Senate elections, the Democrats and Republicans both currently control 50 seats in the US Senate. The Democrats do control the Senate because Kamala Harris is the Democratic vice president who breaks all the ties. So the Democrats are currently defending 14 seats in 2022, while the Republicans are forced to defend 20 seats in 2022, and all the seats that these parties have to defend are on this map down below. So I'm going to start off by filling in the solid seats for both parties. These are seats in which the incumbent party is going to win re-election here no matter what. There's really no doubt about that. The Republicans are going to win in all of these states, giving them 42 seats, while the Democrats are going to win in all of these blue seats. In California, you have the seat currently held by Alex Padilla. He was appointed by Governor Gavin Newsom to fill in the vacancy left by the vice president, Kamala Harris. Of course, she was a senator from California before resigning to become the vice president. Hawaii as well, Illinois, and then the Northeast, you have New York with Chuck Schumer, and then Connecticut and Maryland, as well as Vermont up there. So this gives the Democrats 45 seats to the Republicans with 42 that are both currently all safe for these two parties. I'm going to start off by taking a look at the state of Alaska. This seat is currently held by Republican Lisa Murkowski, and I think that she's definitely a very, very strong candidate in the state of Alaska. So taking a look at the electoral history of Alaska in the Senate, Lisa Murkowski won her first election back in 2004. She won by a pretty slight margin over Tony Knowles, and then in 2010 she was able to win re-election. And what's interesting here is that she won re-election with a write-in campaign. She had actually lost the GOP nomination in 2010. She lost the Republican Party nomination for Senate, even though she was the incumbent Republican. She lost against Joe Miller among the Republican Party. However, she ran a write-in campaign and was able to come back and win the Senate for the state of Alaska. 2016, she ran against Joe Miller again. This time, Joe Miller was a libertarian, but Lisa Murkowski won by an even larger margin. I'm not going to give it to her as a solid state just because there's a lot more candidates in Alaska. Politics definitely works a little bit different in that state, so I'm going to give it to her as likely just because of the sheer amount of candidates that will probably be in the race. And in 2022, I think it'll actually be harder for Lisa Murkowski than in 2016 because, of course, in 2022, she voted to impeach Donald Trump twice, and Lisa Murkowski, she will definitely have a target on her back by many Republicans, and Donald Trump wants her to be gone. And the Republican Party, they do not want to, remove her. The establishment of the GOP, Mitch McConnell, and those types of Republicans, they want Lisa Murkowski there because they do not want to waste money on trying to unseat a popular incumbent Republican that is going to win this race. So it's really only the Trump wing of the party that really wants her to go. So she'll probably face a pretty tough primary challenge just because of that. So this gives the GOP 43. The state of Nevada, this will be a seat that I think the Democrats definitely have the edge in. The state of Nevada has been pretty Democratic over the last couple of elections. Of course, 2008, Obama won it by 12%. The margin has gone down to just 2.4% in 2016 and 2020 for both Clinton and Biden. However, the margins here aren't too bad. Obama was just an anomaly who was able to win Nevada by a huge margin in his first election. So Joe Biden wins Nevada by 2.4%. That's around the same margin as Catherine Cortez Masto's in 2016. So Catherine Cortez Masto wins her first election in the 2016 Senate election in Nevada. She replaced Harry Reid, who was, of course, the former majority leader of the Senate. For Chuck Schumer, and she won 47.1% of the votes. As you can see, Harry Reid here, the former majority leader of the Senate, wins in Nevada by a pretty strong margin, around 6%. And then 2016, it was definitely weaker for Catherine Cortez Masto, but she is not an incumbent. This is only her first term. And 2022, she's pretty popular there, and I think that in 2022, Cortez Masto will be able to win by a larger margin as an incumbent. So that will be here a lean seat. It's not going to go up to likely. It's not going to be over 7% for Cortez Masto unless she runs against someone that's truly horrible. But I think that a lean margin is definitely within reach for Catherine Cortez Masto in Nevada. The state of Arizona, this one was one that was elected in 2020 with the election of Mark Kelly. So Mark Kelly was elected in 2020 against incumbent Martha McSally. She, of course, ran against Kyrsten Sinema in 2018, a race in which she lost. So she lost that race. However, in 2019, John McCain, of course, passed away. In 2019, Martha McSally was appointed to fill the vacancy left by the late John McCain, and so that's why she became a senator and an incumbent. But of course, she lost to Mark Kelly in 2020 by around 2-3%, which was actually a pretty strong margin. Mark Kelly definitely did much better than Joe Biden. Joe Biden only won the state of Arizona by 0.3%. So Mark Kelly currently has a 63-cent share in the betting odds in terms of winning re-election. That was a special election, of course, in 2020, which is why Mark Kelly will be up for re-election again in 2020. So definitely the margins here are pretty good for Mark Kelly from 2020. I think he'll definitely be able to do well in 2022 as well. So I'm going to give Arizona as another lean seat for the Democratic Party. Now, the state of Colorado, I'm going to put as likely for the Democrats here. In the state of Colorado, you currently have Michael Bennet, who is running for re-election, running for a third term. First elected in 2010, Michael Bennet isn't exactly the strongest candidate, but 2016, he is able to win the state of Colorado by 5.7%. Now, compare that to Hillary Clinton's margin in 2016. Clinton won it by 4.9%. So Michael Bennet definitely did do better than Hillary Clinton, and the state of Colorado has gone even more blue since 2016. Now, in 2020, this is a 13.5% margin. It went from 4.9 to 13.5 with the election of Joe Biden. I think Michael Bennet will be able to win by a larger margin here in the state of Colorado, which is why I'm going to put the state of Colorado as a likely seat for incumbent Michael Bennet. So definitely, this is a seat in which I think Democrats will do well in, and that will give them now 48 seats. Now that we move to the Midwest, there are many Republican incumbents here, and I think that the Republicans will definitely still do well, although many of those incumbents are retiring. I mean, you have basically all 5 of these Midwestern Republican incumbents. They could all retire. Right now, Pennsylvania's Pat Toomey has announced that he's retiring. Ohio's Rob Portman, as well as Missouri's Roy Blunt. They all said they were going to retire. Wisconsin, you have Ron Johnson, who said that he prefers to retire. In Iowa, you have Chuck Grassley, who is almost 90 and will be 95, well into his 90s by the time that he leaves his next term, which is why there's huge speculation as to all of these 5 Midwestern incumbent Republicans all retiring. So I'm going to start off by taking a look at the state of Missouri. In the state of Missouri, this was Roy Blunt, the incumbent, and he is not going to be running for re-election. He won his re-election in 2016 by just around less than 3%. That definitely was a very weak margin for Roy Blunt, and considering who the candidates are, you have the possibility of Eric Greitens being the Republican nominee. That would be terrible for them. This is definitely much smaller than Josh Hawley's margin over Claire McCaskill in 2018, where Hawley actually defeated an incumbent Democrat. But for Roy Blunt, definitely this was pretty disappointing for him. And in 2022, Eric Greitens, who was the former governor and had to resign in shame due to sexual harassment allegations, if he is the nominee, and he is currently one of the front runners, definitely has a very high chance at winning the Republican nomination here. If he wins that, I think it's definitely going to be terrible for the GOP. It's still possible that he doesn't win it, and even if he does win the GOP nomination, he still probably is going to win the race just by a pretty slight margin. So I'm going to give Missouri to the GOP as a lean state right now. I can't see it going to the Democrats, but definitely I think Missouri will be pretty close if Eric Greitens is the nominee, and even if he isn't, it's not going to be solid. You're not going to see a Trump-type margin here in Missouri. So Missouri is currently a lean state on this map. The next state I want to take a look at is the state of Iowa. This is Chuck Grassley. He is, of course, the senior Republican in the Senate, and so he currently has an 89% chance at winning re-election. So this is the U.S. Senate election in Iowa, and these are the betting odds for this election. The Republicans are definitely going to win it in Iowa. There's no doubt about that. Doesn't matter who it is, it's going to go to the GOP. However, the issue here is that Chuck Grassley is currently, very old. He will be well into his 90s if he wins re-election. He was, of course, able to win in 2016 by around, a pretty huge margin of 25%, 25 percentage points in favor of Chuck Grassley. In 2010, he won by an even larger margin. His margins have been slipping a little bit as he's been getting older, but Iowa is still, definitely, it's going to be very solid for him if he does run for re-election. So currently his plan is to run for re-election. He's already done all the paperwork and stuff, but that's just something that he has to do. But right now, I'm going to give Iowa as a solid state until he announces that he's not running for re-election. I'm going to keep it as that. So the state of Iowa, that's going to be a 45th seat for the GOP, and the 46th seat that's going to come from the state of Iowa. So in the state of Iowa, this seat is currently held by incumbent Rob Portman. That's the wrong one. Incumbent Rob Portman. So Rob Portman is the incumbent. He's been able to win by pretty strong margins, much stronger than Roy Blunt in Missouri. So the state of Missouri, or in the state of Ohio here, Rob Portman is not going to run again. And currently, Republicans, I mean, they still have an 83% share in terms of winning the seat. The Democrats do have one incumbent Democrat here, and that is Sherrod Brown. They do have one seat in Ohio, but definitely this Sherrod Brown's been there for a pretty long time, and Ohio is no longer like it was before. I mean, look at 2008 and 2012. These are Obama states during that time. This was a 4.6% margin for Obama in 2008, but 2016 it went 8.1% for Trump. In 2020, even with Biden on the ticket for the Democrats, it only went 8% for Trump. So definitely Ohio is much better than it was before, and so that's why the Republicans are going to win here basically no matter what. So that's going to be a likely seat for the GOP there, giving them now 46 seats. The state of Florida as well, I'm going to put this in the lean column. This is Marco Rubio's seat. I think he's definitely another very strong candidate. I keep moving to the wrong page. But in 2016, Marco Rubio was able to win his re-election by a pretty strong margin of around 7 percentage points, 7.7%, defeating Patrick Murphy. 2010 was his first election in which he won 48.9% of the vote. He ran against an independent and a Democrat, which is why, of course, his margin was a lot larger. But 2016 and now 2020, 2022, I think he'll be able to do pretty well here. I think the margin is probably going to go under 7% if Democrats can nominate someone stronger than Patrick Murphy. So for Marco Rubio, I have it currently as a lean seat for him there in the state of Florida. The next state I want to take a look at is the state of Georgia. Now, in the state of Georgia, what's interesting here is that this was another special election in which Democrats won. This, of course, was the election of Raphael Warnock. Raphael Warnock defeats Kelly Loeffler in the runoff election in 2021. This was the one that decided the Senate, and Warnock is the first Democratic senator from Georgia in almost 2-3 decades. So Raphael Warnock definitely made history in 2021 earlier this year. And so currently the Republicans are expected to nominate Doug Collins. Doug Collins is the one that came in third here, and of course he ran against Kelly Loeffler for the Republican Party's vote in Georgia, and that was of course because Loeffler was just appointed by Brian Kemp. She's one of the richest people in the world, so Kelly Loeffler, she lost in 2022. There's no way her or David Perdue come back. They're basically done for in Georgia. So definitely Raphael Warnock, I think, will be a strong candidate. I think that Doug Collins can definitely do well here. If you look at the betting odds right now, it's not looking too great for the Democrats. They currently only have a 53-cent share. The Republicans at 47. It's been pretty close over the last couple of months, but definitely it's been higher than it was before the runoff. Before the runoff, the Republicans had a much higher chance at winning here. But the Democrats, they've been doing all right in Georgia. But with the new laws that have been passed, it's definitely not helped them with Brian Kemp and the new voting restrictions that target African Americans disproportionately. So that's definitely not going to help the Democrats, but I don't think it's going to block them from a victory here. So Raphael Warnock definitely is going to have to do better, and he was able to deliver on the stimulus checks, which I think will definitely help him. But there's other things like that $15 minimum wage that he probably will not be able to deliver on for the people in Georgia. Now, so that's going to be a tilt seat. I think Warnock right now is still favored to win his seat. Definitely, I think it's going to be a very small margin, much smaller than 2%, because he was running against Kelly Loeffler, who's a pretty weak candidate. So that's going to give the Democrats now 49 seats. The Republicans, I'm giving them the state of North Carolina by a tilt margin. I just think that in North Carolina, the Republicans will probably do a little bit better here. So currently, they have a 61-cent share in the betting odds to 40 for the Democrats. The Democrats are currently expected to nominate Jeff Jackson, who is a pretty average candidate, while the Republicans, they have Laura Trump running, but she is not the current front runner, but she is currently polling in second place for Laura Trump. But for her, I think that definitely it'll be a struggle for Laura Trump, but thankfully for the GOP, Laura Trump is not the one that's expected to win right now. And in North Carolina, Richard Burr, he's another incumbent Republican that's retiring. Richard Burr was able to win by a pretty strong margin in 2016, winning the state by 5.7%. 2010, he won his re-election. I believe this was his re-election. He won it by over 10%. 2004, he won it by around 4%. So the state of North Carolina has definitely been getting bluer and bluer. In 2008, you of course saw Barack Obama win the state of North Carolina in 2008. This was an Obama state. Of course, it reverted back to Mitt Romney in 2012 by 2%. It stayed blue, but in 2020, it's gotten closer, down to 1.3%. I think definitely the Republicans are the favorites here in North Carolina. in 2016, it showed that Richard Burr was still a strong contender in North Carolina, but considering that there will not be an incumbent for the GOP in North Carolina, I think the race will definitely be a lot closer. So that's why I'm having North Carolina as a tilt seat on this map. Now, the final one that I want to take a look at before I take a look at these two states in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania is, of course, New Hampshire. New Hampshire, I think, will definitely produce one of the most interesting races, and that is because Maggie Hassan, the incumbent Democrat, is going to have a pretty tough challenge from Governor Chris Sununu, a Republican. Now, Chris Sununu has not announced that he's going to run, but like I've said before, 2022 will be the perfect year for the governor of New Hampshire to run. It's a wave year for the GOP. He's running against Maggie Hassan and not Jeanne Shaheen. Jeanne Shaheen being the stronger candidate here in New Hampshire. So I think that definitely everything works perfectly for Chris Sununu, and I think he would definitely do well here. Of course, Maggie Hassan was only able to win by 0.2%, but she did run against a Republican incumbent. So a Republican incumbent that previously won 60% of the vote. So Maggie Hassan definitely had a pretty strong victory here in 2016. Definitely one of the closest races, and she did do worse than Hillary Clinton here, which was pretty hard to do because Hillary Clinton did disastrous in New Hampshire. Joe Biden increased that margin by 7% in 2020 on the presidential level for the Democratic Party. So definitely, I think that in New Hampshire, Maggie Hassan is still the favored candidate. She's the incumbent. She defeated an incumbent. And at the end of the day, this state is still more Democratic than it is Republican. You saw this state go to Joe Biden by 7.4%. So the state of New Hampshire is going to be a tilt state for the Democratic Party, and I have Maggie Hassan winning her re-election by the slightest of margins. Now it's time for Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. So these two seats, these two races, I think will definitely be the most interesting. In the state of Wisconsin, currently the Republicans have a 54% share, the Democrats 48. However, I'm going to actually give this state to the Democratic Party just because Ron Johnson is not going to be running for re-election in 2022. I really don't think he's going to. He has a chance that he might, but he has stated before that he's not running for re-election. He's just taking those words back. But really, Ron Johnson, he said more recently that he prefers to not run again in 2022. And I think that with how vulnerable he is, because, Wisconsin, 2016, it was a Trump state. But 2022, in 2020, this was a Biden state. It'll be much harder for him to win here. And so the problem for him, I think, is that he probably doesn't want to lose and go out. He probably would want to just retire and then leave the Senate. He's not that old, but I think that definitely Ron Johnson is going to have some trouble winning re-election in 2022, even if he does run again. And that's why these betting odds are just so close, even though he's currently expected to run in terms of what he's technically said. So the state of Wisconsin, I'm going to give to the Democrats as a tilt seat, and this will give the Democrats now 51, so they have, they really do now have control of the U.S. Senate, and this will definitely destroy the power that Joe Manchin has. So in a 50-50 Senate right now, Joe Manchin has a lot of power because he's the middle Democrat, and he's the one that has the highest chance of voting with the Republicans, and he must vote for the Democrats if the Democrats want to get things passed. The final seat here, I'm going to try to go quickly. That is the seat in Pennsylvania, which I'm going to give again to the Democratic Party, this time with a lean classification, because in Pennsylvania, John Fetterman is expected to be the Democratic nominee. He's a very strong and very popular lieutenant governor to Governor Tim Wolf, and so in Pennsylvania, I think that definitely this will be a big struggle for the GOP. They currently only have a 38-cent share of winning a seat in which they currently hold. Pat Toomey is retiring here, the Republican incumbent. He only won by 1.5% in 2016. So even for Pat Toomey, who's relatively popular here, definitely it's been an issue for him trying to win re-election. But 2022, with John Fetterman on the ballot, I think will be definitely a lot more difficult for Pat Toomey. So this is my final updated Senate map. The Republicans at 48 seats, the Democrats winning and increasing their control of the Senate with 52 seats. So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you join my Discord server if you have not, the link to which is at the very top of the description below. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Comment down below which party you think would win the 2022 Senate races. Subscribe to my channel if you have not, and I will see you guys in the next video.